Fallout Equestria the Chrysalis, Chapter 26, Part 3. Sickle immediately twitched, and I started gently stroking a hoof along her scraggly mane as her breathing grew deeper. A few moments later, she produced a groan, ears flicking, and finally her eyes fluttered open, looking blearily up at me and blinking as she tried to focus.
I'm Whisper,
I said quietly, continuing to soothingly stroke her.
Whisper.
She murmured, still blinking, and tried to lift her head only to be stopped by the straps. Her legs jerked, tucking against the bindings that held her down.
What the? Relax.
I said, magic lighting up the buckle of the closest strap.
We've been captured by a changeling hive. I'm busting us out.
She laid her head back down, blinking up at me for a moment.
That... Wow, that was one fucked up trip.
Once I'd undone enough straps, she pulled free, pushing herself up to sit on the gurney despite its whines of protest.
Ugh,
She said, face scrunching up and sticking out her tongue.
I felt like I haven't had anything to drink since...
She halted, a hoof touching her chest. Her expression quickly hardened as she bared her teeth.
Where the fuck is my...
As she turned, she halted again, staring at the heavy, muzzled helm floating before her in my magic. She stared in surprise for a moment, before breaking out in a toothy grin, reaching up to take the helm.
I knew you were a smart bug. Yeah, well, you're not going to like the next part.
I said.
You can't hurt anything on the way out.
She gave a snort, setting down the helmet as she started pulling out pieces of her armor.
No. I'm pretty sure I can hurt them plenty. There are well over 1,000 changelings here.
I said.
They have power armor, magical energy weapons, and extensive combat training, while we're trapped in a stable with a single way out. If we get into a fight, we'll all die. I'm still for killing every motherfucker here.
Sickle said, as she slid the massive breastplate over her head and settled it into place.
Guess I'll have to settle with just killing any dumb cunts that get in our way. This ain't your hive, right? No killing!
I raised my leg with its attached pip-buck.
Every changeling in this hive has one of these, and that means they can detect hostile intent. If we go out there with the intent of hurting any changeling, they'll know it, socials will show up, and we're all back to us dying. What if we only hurt them a little? No!
I said.
I might need you to hold and subdue something until I can stun them. It seems I can get away with that without being deemed hostile, but it's vitally important that we don't hurt anything.
Sickle considered that for a moment before weighing in again.
Okay, seriously, anyling is about the dumbest word I've ever heard. Sickle! Okay, I won't kill any of the fuck stains that kidnapped us, fucked around with their heads, and will probably try to kill us on our way out.
She shoved her helmet into place before looking back at me.
Does it count if I accidentally kill them? Like, holding the little bugs a bit too hard and squishing them? I'm going to assume that would be perceived as hostile.
I dryly replied.
Figures.
She snorted and let out a tired groan.
Fine, we'll do it your way. Fuck we do now. You stay here for a moment while I scout ahead. If anything comes in, grab them, make sure they don't alert anything else, but don't kill them. I'll stun them when I get back. Yeah, fine.
She said, turning to root through the carts and pulling out a bottle.
Don't be too long.
I frowned. To tell the truth, I didn't think there was any chance of getting her to not show up as hostile, but I didn't want to risk myself showing up as hostile by way of permitting the use of lethal force. I quickly shook off the thought.
I'll be right back.
I slipped out, making my way back to the main chamber with its dozens of suspended animation pods. Looking in, I could see one changeling, the other one I'd spoken with before, going around the various pods, a clipboard floating in her magic. I backed out, turning to the stairs nearby. As I expected, it led up into the control room overlooking the chamber. There were 2 changelings there, monitoring the various dials and terminal screens. One looked up from the console in front of her.
Need something?
At least a cover story was easy to come by.
I was just wondering where you have the pony Ocelli wanted. Holding room 3.
She replied immediately.
Anything else? No, that will do.
I said, nodding.
Thank you.
I turned and returned down the stairs, quickly assembling a plan of attack. Engaging more than one at a time would be extremely risky, so it quickly became a matter of isolating them. The first one was easy. I returned to the main chamber and approached the lone changeling there.
Excuse me?
She turned, looking back with a questioning expression.
Yes? Oseli wishes to speak with you about that pink pony.
I said, inclining my head back towards the rear door of the room.
Oh, she's here already? We weren't expecting her for another 20 minutes or so. I guess our business concluded early.
I said with a shrug.
Whatever the reason, she's here now and wants to speak with you. I see.
She said with a frown, then lifted her clipboard.
If she'll give me about 5 minutes, I'll be done with my checks and I can see her. It sounded urgent.
I said, and she hesitated for a moment before sighing and setting down the clipboard.
Fine.
She grumbled and turned to walk.
What's so important that it can't wait 5 minutes? I didn't ask.
We returned through the back way, making our way to the holding room where Oseli was waiting. The changeling I was following paused by the door, wiping away her frustrated expression, and gripped the handle of the door in her magic. As the door opened, my stunning bolt struck and she sank into my magic. Sickle stood beside the door, her head tilted as she watched me drag the other changeling in. No killing, huh?
She's unconscious and uninjured, just like the other one in the cart.
I stashed the new changeling beside the previous, then turned back to Sickle.
2 more, then we can get Starlight and Dusty.
Sickle grunted and nodded, and I slipped out again. While my tactic worked well the first time, it ran into a snag this time. The changeling I spoke to in the observation room said yes, but her gaze still played over the readouts.
Give me a minute to get one of the immersion teams out so they can keep an eye on my station. Is that necessary?
I asked.
It'll only be a couple of minutes. Yeah, it's been in the rule here since what happened last year. Always have to have 2 lings watching the system at all times. Oh.
I said, quickly throwing together a backup plan.
You know what? You stay here. I doubt Oseli would want to interrupt your work. We'll be right back. It wouldn't be any trouble,
She said, but I shook my head.
No, don't worry. It'll only be a moment.
She looked questioningly at me, but didn't say anything and remained at her station. She was still sitting there when I returned a couple of minutes later, and looked up to greet me only to receive a bolt of magic to the face. The second changeling looked over, both at the sharp grunts from her companion and the explosive clash of metal. She had only an instant to process the scene, jerking back at the sight of the armored monstrosity charging her. There was a loud crash and a shout of pain. Then Sickle reared back and slammed the changeling down to the floor, pinning her under her spiked shoes.
Sickle!
I hissed as I scrambled over.
Don't hurt her! She's alive.
Sickle replied with a sneer.
I didn't even kill her a little.
The changeling's horn lit up, but Sickle's reflexes were quicker, and she delivered a painful swat to the glowing horn, disrupting the forming spell and eliciting another sharp cry. I got in close.
I'm sorry about this,
I said as my horn glowed. She started to cry out, perhaps for mercy, before falling unconscious. A faint throb was starting to build in the back of my head. I shook it off. We quickly hauled the 2 unconscious changelings back to the holding room, then returned to the observation room. The controls for all the pods were there, and I had to figure out how to get Starlight and Dusty out. If all else failed, I could just ask Sickle to do it, but I'd prefer a slight more quiet way of opening the pods. Fortunately, there were a set of operating manuals, giant 3-ring binders worn with age, with all the instructions on the functions of the pods. The index quickly led me to the section dealing with emplacing or removing occupants, and I followed the instructions step by step. A red light came over on the 2 top pods, accompanied by a loud buzzer that fell silent a second later. As the system ran through the final preparations, I quickly scanned through the index, looking for anything that might help with the 4 changelings in those pods. Which I assumed were the immersion team the other changeling had spoken of. I also assumed they were the welcoming committee inside the simulation, and if so, they could talk with the changelings outside the simulation, as well as disconnect themselves. Which meant they were one casual call to an unresponsive control away from ruining my entire plan. I found a lockdown command and quickly enacted it, the lights over the pods turning to flashing red as I locked them shut. If I dug longer, I might find a more robust solution, perhaps even locking them in the simulation itself, but time had become a critical resource. There wasn't much traffic in and out of this chamber, but it would only take a single changeling showing up to start the situation deteriorating. Starlight and Dusty's pods hissed open, and Sickle and I hurried down to retrieve them. She slashed through the leads connected to them, and we hauled them away to the holding room. Without sedatives, they woke as quickly as I had, groaning and jerking as consciousness quickly returned. Dusty's awakening was particularly violent, suddenly twisting around and lashing out, blindly slamming a hoof into the back of Sickle's head. Sickle just chuckled.
Calm the fuck down, dumbass. You're being rescued.
Rescued? He blurrily asked, as we stepped into the holding room. But I was in my kitchen. How?
You were in some form of telepathic arcanotech simulation,
I said, while Sickle set the pair of them down.
Short version, Serenity is the changeling hive. They captured us, and we're in the middle of a breakout. It would really help if you both woke up.
Starlight had managed to focus on me.
Whisper, where did you...
Her ears pinned back.
You're not Whisper. I am, I'm just disguised.
I smiled.
Congratulations on picking out differences between two changelings, though. You'd be surprised how many ponies can't do that.
She was silent for a moment, slowly blinking at me.
What?
I shook my head.
Nothing important. Look, we need to move right now if we're going to get out of here. I've got all our gear here. I need you to get your stuff and get ready to go, right now. Can you do that?
Dusty wearily rose to his hooves, while Starlight continued to lie there, blinking and looking around.
But what's going on, and where are we? I just laid down on my couch for a nap. How did we...
I placed my forehooves on either side of her head, holding her gently.
Starlight, that version of Serenity was all a lie. This is the real Serenity, and we're in a lot of trouble. If we're going to get out of here alive, we need to act right now. I promise I'll explain everything once we're out and safe, but we don't have the time right now. Right now, I need you both focused on acting. Can you do that?
She swallowed, her gaze dancing around, but she finally nodded and pushed herself up to her hooves.
Good,
I said, taking a step back.
Your stuff is in the carts. Get any critical gear ready immediately. Those respirator masks, keep them accessible. It was gas that got us on the way in. Everything else gets packed in bags and sorted through when we're safe. I want to be moving in 60 seconds. Hurry.
Quick, concise, clear orders in a stressful situation. I felt a little like Dusty. Right, Dusty said, staggering towards the cart before getting his balance, then quickly pulling out his barding and weapons. Starlight was a little slower to get moving, but the sight of her lancer motivated her into action. As they geared up, I started gathering my own equipment while quickly explaining our situation. In this situation, I just pull out console commands and just type in God mode, infinite ammo. But obviously, they don't have access to that. Anywho, let's get on to our godlike donators. Top donators: Jessie Smith, 630, BadassWaffle, Only One Thing, Ceru, Orion, and Caladis. Matchfic, JockeTF, Luciisu, Darkside, Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel, Jessie, Rolan, Brother Mordred, Omicron, Lyrae, Runescythe, Wilkris, Twinkie, Rysel, Shunamon, Luigi, Chancer Crest, Big Smoke, Bobcat, Murder Princess, Jet, Little Mighty, Solar Symphony, and many more amazing people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.